We are now going to discuss with Dr. Linet MD the discussion about autism. Dr. Linet.
Hi, I'm a board-certified child and adolescent psychiatrist, also board-certified in adult psychiatry, and I would like to help you to understand what autism is. The features of autism include language impairment, interpersonal relatedness impairment, and insistence on sameness or repetition of words, jingles that the individual may hear on television.
What are the first signs of autism?
The very first sign is an aspect of interpersonal relationship, and that is the infant's molding to the mother or father when the child is held. These children tend to be stiff. Normally, even very young children do feel comfort in human contact, but autistic individuals have difficulty with interpersonal relationships.
Would you say the first red flag of concern would be a 4-month-old that doesn't make eye contact, doesn't have a social smile?
Well, the molding, I would say, is the first, but eye contact and smiling come very soon afterwards. We should, at 3 months or so, start to see smiling.
Of course, the pediatrician should exclude a visual or hearing handicap because that could be confused at that age.
That's right. A child may not seem to be related because they may not be able to see or hear. But autism is more than just language problems. Again, I want to stress this, it's an impairment in social interaction. Much of human brain power is devoted to social intelligence. We try to read each other. We try to know whether we can trust each other. And there's something wrong, and we believe it's biological in the brain of people with autism. I'll give an example. A young teenager, high school age, at a football rally for his school, the cheerleaders, in getting the student body excited about the upcoming season, yelled out, "Does anybody think that so-and-so high school can win, can beat us?" And my patient stood up, raised his hand, and explained why he thought the other school was going to win. There's not really anything obviously wrong with his intelligence, except that he didn't understand what was going on socially.
If you had a young child that was, say, 2 years old and not speaking, not trying to use his hands to get you to do things, would that be a kid at risk after you have excluded neurological, hearing impairment, visual impairment? Would that be something of concern?
Yes, well, let's talk about communication, because that's a central, a core aspect of autism. Children may have difficulty with language, and that can be considered a language disorder and not necessarily autistic. But a child with autism uses his parent as a tool, as an instrument, perhaps to reach an object, and the parent feels this. The feeling in the presence of autism is an important clue. The child may take my hand to reach a shelf that the child can't reach. And when it's autism, I don't feel like they're really communicating to me. I feel like they're using me. Also, another aspect of the language impairment that reflects the social impairment is something called pronomial reversal. Mommy refers to herself and says, "I want you, Johnny, to come here." In autism, often the child hears mommy as I, and the child will refer to mommy using the word I, and refer to himself as you, because that's what he heard. Mommy points to Johnny and says you. That's another name for Johnny. So he calls himself you, and he calls mommy I, because he has difficulty in understanding who the other person is.
There's a famous story about a boy that was not with human beings most of his early life, called Tarzan. How would that relate to our discussion of autism? Could a child brought up by wolves, non-autistic, come back to society and act like a normal child?
No, we'd have to actually move away from Tarzan, who's a fictional character, because Tarzan was able to relate. But feral
Well, if it did
children,
happen, what would you say you think what you could talk about?
well, we call these feral children, and they have been, there are cases of children raised by wolves. And when they are found and brought into human society, they look pretty autistic. But if we look carefully, there's a difference. They, in order to have survived, had to be taken care of by wolves, for example. They will run around on all four, and they relate to wolves. After a certain age, 8, 9, 10, it's going to be very difficult for this human being to become comfortable with other human beings, and in that sense they may look autistic. But an autistic child raised by wolves wouldn't be able to relate to wolves, and probably wouldn't have survived, because the wolves probably would neglect such a child. So autistic children, autistic individuals have difficulty appreciating the other, whether it's a human other or another animal. We have feelings for animals.
Would an autistic child brought up in a normal home had a pet, would relate to the pet? We're talking a classical autistic, huh? Something in between.
No, not
So
even
the
a
hallmark-
language impaired child.
So the hallmark would be that socialization or interaction, socialization is one of the hallmarks, you'd say?
Exactly. Whether it's human socialization or other social species.
So the child with you, Dr. Linet,